Nearly 30 years, Steve Jones has worked with the music industry to help build successful radio stations in the United States, Canada, and the Caribbean. And today, Jones oversees branding for Newcap Radio, one of Canada's largest radio companies. He's a widely read blogger and in-demand speaker, spreading the news about business lessons from rock and roll. Please welcome Steve Jones.
Thank you very much. You can stay. Thank you very much. It's awesome to be here at Pollstar Live 2015. It is a huge honor to be invited to this convention. And I thought yesterday, I thought to myself, it's going to be a real hard thing to speak the day after Michael Cole did. But after witnessing the award to Miss Hubbard, I feel even a little bit more intimidated. But this should be fun. We'll play some music, we'll have some fun, and we'll talk about the value and the power of branding. This convention is especially cool for me because normally I'm speaking to conventions that I don't have a personal interest in, like insurance conventions or chiropractors or accountants. And they're all great people, but I don't know anything about their industries. So sometimes I have to spell things out for them. I have to spell out who AC/DC is. You guys are an industry that knows all this stuff already. I feel like I'm in a room of my peers. I don't have to spell out what U2 means. So it'll be fun for us today, I think, to go through the careers of some of the bands we love and see what we can extract from their careers and apply to building better businesses. In the music industry, it applies on a number of levels. When I work with artists to help define their brand DNA, it helps them decide what venues to choose, where to play, because the venues you choose to play says something about you which contributes to your brand. Or who you choose to collaborate with, what sort of musical partnerships you form. Or what songs you reject and keep for your album, what songs you release as a single, what songs you play on your set list, what songs you record as covers on YouTube. All those things are defined by your brand. And how you recover from the dumb stuff you do. That's also a big part of your brand because well-established brands have that opportunity to do dumb things and potentially recover. The book that you have today on the chair, which will be given out after the presentation, is called Brand Like a Rock Star. And that title came to me one night drinking in Austin, Texas. I was on a patio listening to Jimmy Buffett's Margaritaville. And I thought, how did that SOB make so much money off one song? And the idea sort of hit me that, well, he built a brand, a rock star style brand. And I started blogging under the title Brand Like a Rock Star. What didn't come to me drunk in Austin was the catchy subtitle that publishers really like on a book. They want a few words to summarize what the book's all about. So I threw at them this subtitle: How to Turn Your Customers into Crazed Raving Fans and Screaming Groupies. And they felt in a business world that screaming groupies didn't cut it. So we came up with this one: What a bunch of long-haired recovering drug addicts can teach you about marketing and business. That went over even worse, and we settled on the appropriate and somewhat more mainstream lessons from rock and roll to make your business rich and famous. And that does sum it up. What can we learn from the music we listen to on our iPhones or on our CDs if you're that old, or if you're even a generation earlier, your record collection? What did bands do intentionally and by accident to build such powerful brands? And why does any of this matter? Why do you need a brand that rocks? Because in today's world, attention is currency, and if you don't have attention, you don't have anything, and brands that rock get attention. I mean, women still throw their underwear on stage at Tom Jones. And if we can build a brand that rocks like that, that inspires people to either bring extra underwear or remove the stuff they're wearing, that's pretty powerful. Before we get started on a countdown of the top 10 traits of rock star brands, I'd like to just quickly get out of the way this notion that brands are visual, because that's what we've been raised to believe. People believe brands are visual because of cattle ranchers who branded their cattle to distinguish them from the cattle in the next field. But the truth is, brands go far deeper than logos or slogans. And as you look at famous brands, there's something besides that logo, that color scheme, that font that makes you fall in love with them. But logos do matter. If you choose the wrong font for your children's clothing store, things could go wrong. Sunrise Sushi learned the hard way that iconic Japanese image doesn't work so well as a silhouette. Our friends at Mama's Baking blew the logo game. Yep. And this poor dentist in Mexico, who meant very well with his illustrated version of what it looks like to be in his office. And finally, the poor people at the Addington Pediatric Center who really messed up the logo game. Logos are important, but they're not the be-all and the end-all of your brand. Your brand transcends logos and slogans. Your brand is really an emotional reaction. It's what happens in someone's heart when they interact with a product or a service, a venue, an artist, you as an individual. People think things, they feel things, and the feeling is where the brand is. Like the Boston song. It is all about the feelings. Brands are emotional. That is the essence of a brand. And if we all believe that to be true, we can dig in then to a countdown of the top 10 traits of rock star brands. Beginning at number 10, be consistent. As exemplified by AC/DC. There they are in 1981. You Shook Me All Night Long. Huge hit song. Have a look at AC/DC in 1981, and what do we see? Lead singer Brian Johnson. That felt cap, sleeveless denim, tight jeans, screaming into the microphone. Has probably one too many buttons undone on that shirt. And next to him is Angus Young in a schoolboy outfit, playing his guitar. 1981. We fast forward 30 years, the Black Ice Tour, AC/DC's back. And look how far they've come. With absolute consistency, once again, 30 years in the future, Brian Johnson still wearing the newsboy felt cap, still has sleeveless denim, definitely has one too many buttons undone, especially considering he's now 30 years older. And Angus in the schoolboy outfit playing his guitar. That's AC/DC. In 30 years, that's the kind of evolution AC/DC's experienced. It's amazing how consistent this brand is. They've been able to outlast disco, new wave, punk, hair bands, grunge. Now in the age of Mumford folk and EDM, AC/DC's still going strong and back on tour this coming summer. It's incredible. If you go through the AC/DC song catalog, you won't find a single song about the plight of starving children in the developing world, or a song about the angst you feel in your heart when a relationship goes south. Nothing like that. What you will find over the course of 17 studio albums are 24 different songs with the word rock right in the title. There's no debate what this band is about. Rock and Roll Train, for those about to rock. Rock and Rolling Noise Pollution. And of course their new album, Rock or Bust, with 4 more songs on it with the word rock right in the title. I'm not mocking AC/DC for this. This is incredible consistency. It takes guts, it takes talent and skill and creativity to not waver from your mission, album after album, year after year. It's incredible consistency right down to that font. You can write anything in that font, and it screams AC/DC. That's how consistent this brand has been.
AC/DC, first of all, the guys are like 50, and none of them are above like 3 feet high. Angus Young, we're an hour and a half. But the best is Brian Johnson. He comes out. They can take any song. They all sound the same. It's always the same concert, but it rocks. They can take the hokey pokey and tear it up. They gotta come out like, put your left foot in. Ooh, put your left foot out.
in Jim Brewer on AC/DC's consistency, and he's right. And as I said, I'm not making fun of them for playing 3 chords over the course of 40 years. It's genius. It's a little bit misleading, though, because it gives you the impression that great brands can never evolve, renovate, change, grow. And they can. AC/DC chose to be the same every album in order to be consistent, but there are many bands who have been consistent in a different way, including the most successful band of all time, the Beatles. There they are in 1963. The Beatles, back in that day, recorded songs like All My Lovin' and She Loves You and I Want to Hold Your Hand. They were 4 innocent-looking, cute boys from Liverpool with funny accents who told innocent jokes. That was 1963. Fast forward only 3 years. 1966. Now AC/DC, the Beatles, grittier, long shaggy hair, sideburns, clothing doesn't match anymore. And now instead of joking about innocent, happy-go-lucky things, they're talking about being more popular than Jesus. And then 3 more years go by. Now, the Beatles are rocking hard. Revolution was as hard as anything else, like Zeppelin and Deep Purple that came out that year. It was a hard rock song. And look at the hair has grown out. There are creatures that could live in John Lennon's beard. This is a band that's changed dramatically now between 1963 and 1969. They consistently did that. They consistently surprised and amazed their fans. When the Beatles recorded a new song, people bought it not just to hear the song, but to hear how they would change the game. They changed the way songs were written, produced, recorded, the way they were promoted, the way bands toured, or in the case of the Beatles, eventually didn't tour. The Beatles consistently changed the game, and that is consistency. It doesn't mean always being the same. It means always doing what's expected of you by your fans. Now, I happen to drive a Jeep. And a Jeep, I think, is a great example of automotive consistency. The bug-eyed headlights, the 8 grills on the bar. A vehicle that 100 years after it was invented looks almost the same. What's changed under the hood, the conveniences have changed, the technology's evolved, but the look and feel and mission of a vehicle that can tackle the Rubicon Trail in California, that has not wavered for Jeep for over 100 years. And Coca-Cola. We can't tell from looking at that whether that Coke bottle is from 1914 or 2014, aside from the fact that digital photography wasn't invented in 1914, so my money's on recent, but you can't tell. It looks exactly the same 100 years later. Rockstar brands are incredibly consistent. They know what their fans expect of them, and they deliver it over and over again. Number 9 on our countdown is a bit counterintuitive. Start out small. Now, in business, that's not how you necessarily do things. People want to be big, they want to be rich, they want to be world famous. But great brands almost universally start out small with something of value that drives them, core values in their heart, like Robert Nesta Marley, Bob Marley and the Wailers. Now, when Bob Marley started making music, in Jamaica in the mid-60s, the word reggae didn't even exist. Imagine making something so niche that nobody had a word to describe it. Bob Marley just made the music that was in his heart. He sang about being the mixed-race child in a predominantly black community. He sang about being poor and growing up in the mountains of Jamaica. He sang about being Rastafarian, about the sunshine and the beaches and the island life. He sang about the love in his heart. He sang about things that really mattered to him. And then reggae exploded. Eric Clapton recorded I Shot the Sheriff. Reggae was everywhere, and so was Bob Marley, becoming one of the most successful selling artists of the 70s, not because he compromised or because he recorded a disco song, no offense, Rod Stewart, Kiss, and the Rolling Stones. He just did what was in his heart. And when reggae became popular, Bob Marley became incredibly popular with it, without ever compromising those core values. And great brands are driven by those kind of core values. Starbucks, when it first opened up in Seattle, you couldn't buy a venti chai tea latte soy milk. They didn't sell that. They didn't even sell coffee. They sold coffee beans, tea leaves, and spices. But they believed that all of that could be done in a more human way, in a more rich and fulfilling way. And now, even though there are Starbucks on every corner of every city in every country on this planet, they still strive for that same mission in their stores to deliver a coffee experience, or if you want a venti vanilla bean frappuccino experience in a more warm human environment. And Apple, same thing. That very first Apple I computer that Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak built looked nothing like your new iPhone. But it did the same thing. It took technology that until then had been huge and made it intuitive and personal. And Apple continues to develop on those same core values. Speaking of core values that drive you, Ron Burgundy has a lesson about living up to core values.
Mr. Burgundy, I want to thank you for coming out here to Connecticut to do this audition.
Thank you for having me.
Basically, how it's going to work is we're going to have you do maybe about 2 or 3 minutes of a mock broadcast.
What is the name of this network again? ESPN?
No, ESPN.
That's a terrible name. Hello, sports fans. I'm Ron Burgundy, here at the desk of ESPN. And there were some things going on in sports today that will make your brain fall out of your skull. We go next to Wrigley Field, where the Astros and the Cubs got together and had a crazy idea. Let's play 2 games in 1 day, something that had never been done before in the history of baseball. So let's go to college sports. The University of Notre Dame announced today that it will change its mascot from the Fighting Irish to the Fighting Doberman Pinscher Genitalias. Students were outraged at the news. What?
That wasn't a story that we had on the prompter.
Well, of course, I made it up. Because I've got nothing here. You're giving me baseball and hockey, and I got my keister blowing in the wind. I'm made to look like a fool here.
It's sports.
All around the clock, sports all the time.
That's the concept of the news.
Oh, that's never gonna work. That's ridiculous. I mean, that's like a 24-hour cooking network or an all-music channel. Ridiculous. That's really dumb. Seriously, this thing is going to be a financial and cultural disaster. Sports Center. Think about that. That's just dumb.
Thanks for coming in, Mr. Burgundy. I think that's it. Obviously, we're not going to be hiring you.
Good. I don't want anything to do with this place. This place is run by a bunch of children.
All right, that's uncalled for.
Imagine the pressure that ESPN must have been under when they launched to get great ratings, to do what everybody else did, to compromise their core values to sports. They were probably under tremendous pressure to put on a 6 o'clock newscast like all the other networks. How about a late night talk show and some evening sitcoms and do what everybody else is doing? But they didn't. And they had the rights to nothing. They didn't have NBA or NFL or Major League Baseball or even hockey. They had nothing. But they stuck to their mission of sports. And eventually they became obviously incredibly successful. Now there's how many different ESPN channels? And it's thanks to ESPN that poker has become a sport because we need to fill time. It started out so small about core values and grew, and that's how great brands happen. All rock star brands start out small. Let your core values define you instead of your desire to get rich. Because if your desire to be huge and world famous and rich is what drives you forward, there's a very good chance you'll compromise those core values at the first chance you get. Rockstar rule number 8 is another one that's counterintuitive. Be different, don't be better. In other words, strive to stand out instead of just striving to be a little bit better than your competitors. It sounds odd that I would say you don't have to be better, but we live in a world where access to information and growth and personal development and business development is everywhere. All of your competitors have the same access that you do. So in the consumer's mind, the difference between product A and product B there might be no difference, even though one is better than the other. It's so hard to be a little bit better. Just strive to be really, really good and very, very different. Like this band, Wicked Lester. Wicked Lester almost made it big, but they didn't. It was 1972, and they were about to break up when the 2 principal members of the band decided to try something different. They changed their name, changed their look, and within 2 years, they were on their first world tour as Kiss. Kiss showed the world something it had never seen before. ridiculous comic book makeup, pyrotechnics that were huge, fire and blood spitting out of Gene Simmons' mouth. It was crazy. And people hated Kiss. I remember growing up in the 70s, in the Kiss era, the people who hated Kiss. My parents, my teachers, the principal, everyone at church, the cops, anyone over 35. Like it seemed like most of the world hated Kiss, yet their fans were so in love with this band that they formed an army, the Kiss Army. Kiss got there not by being better. When they were Wicked Lester, they were already really good musicians. And when they became Kiss, they remained good musicians. It's impossible to get that much better that quickly, to go from obscurity to a world tour in 2 years. But you can get there by being dramatically different from everybody else. Can you name the most profitable bobsledding team in history? Anybody? Jamaica. Of course it's Jamaica.
Some people thought they were crazy. Others disagreed and thought they were insane. They thought, well, mostly they didn't think about what other people thought. Visa, the only card accepted at the Olympic Games. More people go with Visa.
So at the 2010 Olympics, Visa pays the Jamaican bobsled team a 7-figure check for the rights to use their name and image to promote Visa. As of 2010, how many bobsled races had the Jamaican team won? None. 0. Yet their name and their image was still worth over $1 million to Visa because they were dramatically different. Because up until 1988 at the Calgary Olympics, no one had ever seen Jamaicans in a bobsled. That was really interesting, and it captivated us. And the only way to get through the mental filter your consumers have is to be dramatically different from everybody else. And I'll show you a short video of a guy named David Holmes, works for Southwest Airlines. As you watch the video, think to yourself, are you watching the most capable flight attendant in the world, or just the most unique flight attendant in the world?
Good evening, folks. Welcome aboard Southwest Airlines Flight 372, service to Oklahoma City. Those of you that have flown us before know that we do things a little bit differently here on Southwest. Some of us tell jokes, some of us sing, some of us just stand there and look beautiful. I, unfortunately, can do none of those. So here's the one thing that I do know how to do. We're going to shake things up a little bit. I need a little audience participation. Otherwise, this is not going to go over well at all. So here's what I need, especially you guys in the front, because you know what's coming. All right, I need a beat, all right? All I need you to do is stomp and clap, and I'm going to do the rest, because I've had 5 flights today, and I just cannot do the regular boring announcement again. Otherwise, I'm going to put myself to sleep. So, you guys with me? All right. So give me a stomp, clap, clap. Come on, stomp, clap, clap. Stay on beat there. There you go. Keep that going. This is Flight 372 on SWA. The flight attendants on board serving you today. Teresa in the middle, David in the back. My name is David, and I'm here to tell you that shortly after takeoff, first things first, there's soft drinks and coffee to quench your thirst. But if you want another kind of drink, then just holler. Alcoholic beverages will be $4. If a Monster Energy drink is your plan, that'll be $3, and you get the whole can. We won't take your cash, you gotta pay with plastic. If you have a coupon, then that's fantastic. We know you're ready to get to new places. Open up the bins, put away your suitcases. Carry on items, go under the seat in front of you, so none of you have things by your feet. If you have a seat on the road with the exit, we're going to talk to you, so you might as well expect it. You got to help evacuate in case we need you. If you don't want to, then we're going to reseat you. Before we leave, our advice is put away your electronic devices. Fasten your seatbelt, then put your trays up. Press the button to make the seat back raise up. Sit back, relax, have a good time. It's almost time to go, so I'm done with the rhyme. Thank you for the fact that I wasn't ignored. This is Southwest Airlines. Welcome aboard.
David Holmes of Southwest Airlines. I want that guy on my flight home. Even though if something terrible happens, I have no idea whether or not he's the best guy to deploy the emergency chutes or find the lighting on the floor to get me to the nearest exit. I don't know. But the line in there that stands out for me that we can take away from that is thank you for the fact that I wasn't ignored. Because he delivered the most boring, mundane information in the history of humankind. And he wasn't ignored. That says something. But you could also see some of the looks on people's faces as he gave that rap, as he freestyled the in-flight safety announcements. Some people didn't look impressed. They looked sort of bored or indifferent or even pissed off. And that goes with being different. Remember what I said about Kiss? How many people hated Kiss? When Kiss came out, millions of people hated them. But that small percentage that loved them so incredibly much that they made them into superstars. There is a natural risk that goes along with being different. And that is the risk that some people might not like you. The risk of insult is the price of clarity. Roy Williams said that. He's an author of a book called The Wizard of Ads. The risk of insult is the price of clarity. In other words, David Holmes had to risk some people not liking him in order to cut through the clutter and be heard. In business, in the music business, in all business, we have to understand that some people will not like us. If we're clear about who we are and what we represent as a brand, some people won't like us fine. Instead of worrying about that, we should celebrate that. When people say, I hate you, you should say why, and if they answer anything, then you won the game because they are aware of you and they understand why they've chosen not to shop with you. Rockstar brands are universally different. Instead of being just slightly better, they're dramatically different. Rockstar rule number 7 on the countdown, create an experience for your customers. And the man who inspired me to write this book is the best example in music history of someone who creates an experience. Jimmy Buffett.
Wasted away again in Margaritaville.
208-word song about getting drunk.
Searching for my lost shaker song.
And it's made him millions of dollars.
Some people claim that there's a woman to blame. But I know this is somebody's fault.
So you guys have seen what happens before a Buffett show, the kind of debauchery that goes on in the parking lot as people tailgate before a Jimmy Buffett concert. It's crazy, the amount of alcohol consumed. People decorate up their bodies. They wear crazy costumes. Some people even decorate their car, all in the name of celebrating and experiencing Jimmy Buffett. This is a picture I took, well, it was taken of me at a Buffett show a few years ago. That is my friend Scott on the left in a coconut bra. And that's me with my drink. And I will own up to the fact that until I bought that $45 tour t-shirt that I've never worn since, I was also wearing a coconut bra. Now, we have a thing in the city I live in where when your kid's 13, you take your son or daughter to work for a day and you show them what you do, or you try to pretend to be busy so that they think you do something. And on that day, I happened to be delivering a keynote for a business conference, so I brought my son Matt with me. He was 13 years old, he's in the audience, and I realized, oh no, we're gonna get to the part where he's gonna see me drunk at the Buffett concert. So, being a good parent, it was a teaching moment. In the car on the way home, I said, Matt, I want you to know, at the Buffett concert, I wasn't that drunk. I was just having fun with my friends. You don't need to be embarrassed. And he said, I wasn't embarrassed that you were drunk. I was embarrassed that you were drinking girly drinks. So there you have it. Mike's Hard Lime is apparently well branded as a girly drink. Speaking of experiences, what do you think Harley Davidson sells? It's not motorbikes. Harley Davidson sells the badass experience. Owning a Harley is like admission into the badass club. And the proof is in the demographics of the average Harley owner. The average Harley owner is a man approaching 50 who makes close to $100,000 a year. That is not the profile of an actual badass. That is not the profile of somebody who's going to run off and join the Hells Angels. No offense to Harley owners, but that is the profile of a guy who's wheeling a fat boy out of a 3-car garage in the suburbs on a Sunday after his wife's told him he can because he did the chores. And he's got $600 worth of leather strapped to his thighs, and he's going to drive around with other middle-aged men and scare the children in the neighborhood. And I'm not saying that as a criticism to Harley owners. If I were going to buy a bike, I think I would buy a Harley. Who doesn't want to be in the badass club? Versus like a Vespa. That doesn't put me in the badass club at all. And I admitted I drive a Jeep, so I bought the experience too. Jeep is the ultimate off-road vehicle. It can go anywhere. You don't need roads. I will never take my $40,000 Wrangler off paved roads. Are you kidding me? That's crazy. But I want to be in the club. I want to be the guy who goes anywhere, who doesn't need roads. I want to be the guy who goes off into uncharted territory. I'm buying the experience, not the product. Rockstar brands do that. That's why Jimmy Buffett has been able to turn Margaritaville, one song about getting drunk, into a business empire. Because you're experiencing the beach bum lifestyle. For a few minutes, you're experiencing what it's like to be living on the beach, worrying about nothing except finding your lost shaker of salt. It's not the authentic experience, as you can probably find out when you go walk Broadway later on this evening and stop into that famous, authentic Nashville honky-tonk called Jimmy Buffett's Margaritaville. But it's the experience, and when you buy the cheeseburger in paradise or the overpriced margarita, that is what you're buying, all about the experience. Rockstar rule number 6, live up to the expectations of your fans. I think no band went through this more emotionally than U2 did. This era of U2, the Joshua Tree, a band that was rootsy and real. They played authentic songs like I Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For, With or Without You, or their earlier stuff like New Year's Day. Amazing music from the heart, real and raw. They had the jangly guitars. They were out on stage without any sort of production or weirdness. I remember their Live Aid performance was one of the greatest performances I had witnessed in my life until Queen came on and blew them away. That was what U2 meant to a generation of fans. As the 80s gave way to the 90s, U2 got a little more eclectic and experimental. Remember them adding all kinds of tape loops and industrial sounds to their music. And their huge stage shows that drew all kinds of controversy, but record sales dropped. Fans were confused because the U2 we saw a moment ago gave way to this band. The U2 of the 90s looked nothing like the U2 of the 80s that we came to know and love. Even the band knew they were getting off track. Their creative hearts told them to experiment, but they knew they were going too far. In fact, they knew it so clearly that in 1995 they recorded an album that was just too weird to be called a U2 album. And they did something genius that we can all learn from in business. They released it under a different name. The album was called Original Soundtracks 1 by Passengers. It wasn't by U2. Even though the music was made by the guys in U2. They knew that if they released that album, they would have jumped the shark, that they would have gone so far beyond the expectations of their fans that they could never come back. So they wisely gave themselves a new name, released the album that no one bought, but that's okay because they got the creative expression out and they were able to come back in the 2000s, declare themselves reapplying for the job of the best rock and roll band in the world, and record Beautiful Day, which became one of their biggest hits. And they continue to be a massive concert draw, and they sell lots of albums too, free, directly to your phone. Now, you think a company like Coors would have understood this intuitively. Coors is a beer company. But they noticed about 20 years ago that we, consumers, were spending money on bottled water. And Coors thought to themselves, well, we have that awesome Golden, Colorado facility built above the river where we get our Rocky Mountain sparkling water. Why not just make water instead of beer? And they did. They took advantage of the production systems, the distribution systems, the sales systems, the whole thing. This should have been huge, but it was a massive flop. Coors sparkling water was a failure because Coors does not represent water in the mind of the consumer. Had they slapped a different name on this, I bet this would have been a massive success. But when I drink a six-pack of Coors, I'm looking for a certain feeling. And if I drink 6 Coors water, I don't have the same feeling. So Coors blew through millions of dollars trying to make that successful and failed. They didn't quite learn their lesson because they're back with Coors Iced Tea, but I think ultimately they'll realize that they are indeed a beer company. Now, Coke and Pepsi got it. Coke water on the left, known as Dasani, and Pepsi water on the right, Aquafina, both huge successes that wouldn't be so if they were called Coke water and Pepsi water. The point is you are what they think you are, not what you think you are. The only thing that matters is the perception your consumer has of you. That is what defines you. And if it doesn't match up to what you think you are, then you have some work ahead of you as a brand. Because rockstar brands understand what their consumers believe to be true about them, and they live up to that with everything they do. Rockstar rule number 5, find your one thing. A lesson in focus that was brought about when I received a phone call from Phil Carson, who manages Foreigner. And Phil worked with AC/DC, Twisted Sister, and a whole bunch of other bands, a very smart man. And he said, Foreigner, with all their hits, wasn't selling as many concert tickets as he would have liked. Foreigner had 13 hits, including Cold as Ice, from the late 70s to the mid 80s, had all those hit songs. None of them were like huge songs that defined our lives, but they were all big songs. And he was concerned that they weren't selling as many tickets as other bands and wanted my input as to how they could sell more tickets. And he said there's one band in particular that was driving him crazy, a band that only really had one big hit. And I said, well, what band is that? And he said, oh, Leonard Skinner. Well, that describes your problem. Leonard Skinner's one big hit was Sweet Home Alabama. How many Confederate flags can you count? And if you grew up in North America in the 70s and 80s and probably today, there's a very good chance that you consumed alcohol in a field or forest underage while that song played, and there was probably a bonfire nearby. That was like a rite of passage for all of us. Sweet Home Alabama is not a song. It's a license plate. It's an anthem. And even though it was their only huge hit, people will part with money to hear them play it, before they'll part with money to hear Foreigner play 12 or 13 songs they kind of like. It is that passion for one thing that inspires consumers to part with their money. And Skinner can do that better than a lot of bands because they had that one defining anthemic hit. Southwest Airlines was defined by one thing, the desire to be the ultimate low-cost carrier. And everything Southwest has ever done has been put through that low-cost filter. Will this make us the best low-cost carrier? As a result, they've become one of the most successful airlines, the number 2 passenger airline in America. But they never set out to be that successful. They just wanted to be the number 1 low-cost carrier. But driven by focus, they became even bigger. It's focus that drives them forward. IKEA's mission is to create furniture that you put together, and not always well, and potentially could ruin your marriage. But IKEA's mission is not to create furniture you buy and it's hauled to your house in a truck and it's already set up. That's not what they do. They're focused on furniture you put together. And the quality is important to IKEA. Meatballs are important to IKEA. Lots of things are important to IKEA. But put it together yourself is their principle.
Do you know what the secret of life is?
No, what?
This.
Your finger?
One thing. Just one thing. You stick to that and everything else don't mean shit.
That's great, but what's the one thing?
That's what you gotta figure out.
Those are powerful words. What's your one thing? That's what you've got to figure out. What is the one thing you represent? The one phrase, the one word. What is your one thing that defines you? And it can't be like the same words that define your competitor. You just can't say, well, we're defined by quality. Yippee, so is everybody else. Has to be unique. It has to be unique to you versus your competitors. What is your one thing? Think about that, because Rockstar brands are built on focus. If you think of a lake versus a well, a lake looks like it has a lot of water in it, but you can take all the water out of a lake. A well looks like it has very little water in it, but it will give you water forever. Strive to be a well of focus and passion versus a lake of sort of relative indifference. Rockstar rule number 4, take smart risks. I mentioned earlier that when I speak to certain conventions and conferences, some people don't know who I'm talking about when I talk about certain bands. This is always one of them, Al Kooper. In a room of music people, some people will recognize Al Kooper, but Al Kooper wasn't a household name in rock and roll. But he did, by taking a smart risk, change music history. On the song that Rolling Stone magazine called the #1 song in the rock and roll era, Al Kooper took a smart and calculated risk and changed the course of music.
I met this producer named Tom Wilson, and he started at first taking my songs and recording them with people. So he knew me as a songwriter, although he knew that I played guitar. And then he found out that I was like a Bob Dylan fan. So he said, Al, you want to come to a Dylan session and watch? I said, yeah, I would love that. He says, next Thursday, 2 o'clock, Studio B. I said, thank you so much, Tom. And I said, man, I want to play on that session. And so the session is going along, and they moved the organ player over to piano. They don't like the organ. So I went over to Tom Wilson. I said, man, I said, let me play the organ. I got a great part for this, which was total lie. I didn't have anything. I just wanted to play on this session. And he said, oh, Al, he said, you a guitar player. What you doing? And then they said, Tom, you got a call on line 1. He said, Al, you're a guitar player. Sit down. And he went and got the call, and I said, well, he didn't say no. And then Tom came, he said, okay, this is take 2. Hey, what are you doing out there? And all the musicians are laughing and everything. You know, he gave me a chance. And it wasn't really very loud in the headphone mix. So I couldn't hear what I was playing. When I was playing, I would like wait an 8th note before I came in to make sure it was the right chord. It turned out to be the only complete take of the day, that take. So it ended, and Tom Wilson said, if you all want, come in the studio, we're going to listen to that back. So we all went into the control room, and they're playing it back, and after about 30 seconds, Dylan says to Tom Wilson, says, turn the organ up. And Tom Wilson says, hey, Bob, that guy's not an organ player. He's just he's a guitar player. And Bob said, I don't care what he is, make the organ louder. And that's the day that I became an organ player. And that was the take that they kept for Like a Rolling Stone.
Like a rolling stone.
I think Al Kooper should be like a role model for all of us. First of all, he BS's his way onto the studio floor, doesn't have a part, can't hear himself, and improvises and creates the organ part to Like a Rolling Stone, which you will never hear the same way again. If you didn't know that story already, every time he comes into play, he's an 8th note late because he can't hear the headphone mix. It's an amazing story of taking a smart and calculated risk. And I say a risk because if it didn't work out, we all know how Bob Dylan is when he's not happy. He's a really easygoing guy. And it could have ended badly for Al Kooper, but it didn't because he took a smart and calculated risk. I love the Red Bull brand for the risk it takes. They're constantly taking risks. Remember a couple of years ago, they threw a guy out of a spaceship? They threw Felix Baumgartner out of a spaceship 130,000 feet in the air with a parachute on. Somewhere, there's a guy in legal at Red Bull who went, okay, why not? What could possibly go wrong? It turned out okay. Red Bull got incredible amounts of publicity over it. But someone had to take a smart and calculated risk in order to get ahead. And Coke takes risks too, like New Coke. I raised New Coke because sometimes risks don't work out, but they seldom kill you. Most of the time, when you take a smart and calculated risk with people who trust you and you fail, you come back to fight another day. And Coke is, to this day, still a reasonably successful brand. And being a Canadian, I have to invoke Wayne Gretzky at some point. It's in our Constitution. Wayne Gretzky once said, "You miss 100% of the shots you don't take." It's easy to not take shots. When you take shots, you might not score, you might miss the net, you might hit the post, you might fall on your ass, but you might just score a goal. But you have to shoot first. So take some smart and calculated risks and see what happens. Rockstar rule number 3 is one of my favorites to talk about because it throws a lot of business people into a weird mental state. And it's based on a song by Green Day, to know and understand and appreciate your enemy. Do you know your enemy? Do you know your competitors? And it seems simple enough, but let's take it a layer deeper than just knowing who your competitors are and what they do, what they charge. Take it a layer deeper than that. And think about how valuable your competitors are to you, because your competitors help define who you are. If there was no Lex Luthor, there would be no need for Superman. He would just be this odd guy who works at the newspaper and changes clothes in a phone booth. He would be a weirdo. There would be no need to save the world because Lex Luthor does not exist. If there was no Goliath, we would not find the story of David throwing rocks very interesting. Goliath defines David the way Lex Luthor defines Superman. As a Red Sox fan, there is only one team I am required to hate, and that's the Yankees. It's part of my DNA. But I don't want the Yankees to go away. I want the Yankees to exist forever, every weekend at Fenway one weekend, at Yankee Stadium the next. And I want them to lose almost all the time, heartbreakingly so. In business, you want your competitors around. They help define who you are. Your mission should not be to put your competitors out of business. Your mission should be to keep them barely making payroll every second week for the rest of their miserable lives. But keep them around because they help define who you are. In retail, a great example is the Target-Walmart battle. Now, Walmart is all about saving money. Low prices are everything to Walmart. In fact, it's the first line in their positioning statement, save money. Target knew they could never be successful against a Walmart based on low price if their only point of differentiation was lower prices. Target had to have something else besides low price. In fact, they came up with something so clever, they used low price against Walmart. Target says expect more. Think about what that means. That not so subtly says, the stuff at Walmart is crap, and you can do better. That's exactly what that phrase says. Expect more. From what? From who? From Walmart. Same thing in home improvement. Home Depot, the store for do-it-yourself guys, guys who can do it themselves. In fact, the first line of their positioning statement says, you can do it. People like me have a bit of a dispute with Home Depot over that. We can't do it. I'm the kind of person who injures myself with a power tool. Lowe's knows this. They know people like me exist. So Lowe's doesn't ask me to do it. Lowe's says, come on, idiot, let's build something together. We'll help you. And their aisles are wider, their shelves aren't as high. There's not quite as much sawdust and intimidation at a Lowe's. And they've been very successful by using Home Depot's strength against them, the same way that Target has used Walmart's strength against it. And this was covered thousands of years ago by Chinese military philosopher Sun Tzu. And in his book, The Art of War, Sun Tzu wrote, "So it is said that if you know your enemies and know yourself, you can win 100 battles without a single loss. If you know only yourself, but not your opponent, you may win or lose. If you know neither yourself nor your enemy, you will always endanger yourself." Brilliant words from Sun Tzu. Rockstar brands know who their competitors are, know everything they can about them, know what their customers think about their competitors, and use all of that to their advantage to keep their competitors around, barely existing forever. Rockstar rule number 2, we need to be real in business. We need to have some more fun and let our customers know that we're having fun. Let them know that we're human. Nobody in music does this better than Taylor Swift. Your name. Taylor is notorious for being very honest in her music, which is the reason she says it's so hard to find a date, because you end up the topic of one of her songs. She's very real in her music and in person. And a few years ago, I was at a country music festival and I had a backstage pass for me plus one to meet with Taylor. I was there with my wife and our 2 sons, who at that time were 13 and 16. I was also there with my friend Tom, his wife, and his 2 sons, and their daughter. And we were trying to decide who's going to get this extra backstage pass. I first of all ruled out my 2 teenage boys because they desperately wanted to meet Taylor Swift for all the wrong reasons. There's no way I could make a career in the music business with a restraining order against me for Taylor Swift. So we ruled out my kids and Tom's little purse too. And that left Margaret Ann. 9 years old, huge Taylor Swift fan. So Margaret Ann went shopping that day for a new dress, a new hat, and we went backstage to meet Taylor Swift. And if you've met Taylor, you know what it's like. It's like every other backstage event. You're there for about 90 seconds with the artist, but this was a special 90 seconds. I watched Taylor walk in the room and immediately size up the situation that I was inconsequential, and Margaret Ann mattered. And she got down on one knee to be eye level with Maggie, and they had this 90-second conversation about boys and dresses and music and whatever else. And in that 90 seconds, Margaret Ann felt like she was the only person that mattered in Taylor Swift's entire world. And I watched after we were done as more people came in, and this happened over and over again, that she gave herself fully to her fans. There wasn't a second of disinterest or dishonesty. Completely real and raw, and very human, and I think through that she builds fans for life. When you do that, you build a safety net for yourself, because ultimately you will do something stupid. Hugh Grant. But Hugh Grant probably saved his career. When Hugh Grant was arrested with a hooker, it was pre-social media day, so no one was tweeting about it. There was no Facebook about it. And his people told him, go underground, go to St. Bart's, go away. Lay low for a few weeks. This will all blow over in time. It'll disappear. But he didn't. He went on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno, and he just made a statement in which he apologized.
I think you know in life pretty much what's a good thing to do and what's a bad thing. And I did a bad thing, and there you have...
He just came clean. Now, I remember that very clearly because I was hosting a morning radio show that year, and one of those sort of goofy morning radio zoo shows with like 10 characters who all say stuff. And the days before he was on The Tonight Show, we made a lot of Hugh Grant and the hooker jokes. It was a pretty good, it was writing itself. It was really easy. The day after he was on The Tonight Show and apologized, one of us made a Hugh Grant and the hooker joke, and it just sort of felt like that wasn't right. That didn't feel good. And it only occurred to me years later that he bared his soul to us and apologized. And when someone does that, it is against our nature to kick them when they're down. An honest and sincere apology can save you, and he did that, saved his career. That movie became a big hit, and he's had many hit movies since. I think in large part because of that moment where he chose to be honest and real and human. This applies to business. When you're honest about what you do, what your product does, you make real human connections. And Hotels.com has done this beautifully in their new campaign with Captain Obvious.
I've always found you don't know you need a hotel room until you're sure you do.
Thanks, Captain Obvious.
Which is what makes using the Hotels.com mobile app so useful. I can book a nearby hotel room from wherever I am. Or I could not book a hotel room and put my cell phone back into my pocket as if nothing happened. Hotels.com. I don't need it right now.
This guy actually says in their marketing campaign, I don't need it right now. That's not what we're told in marketing school. You don't tell people, you probably don't need our product right now. We're told to lie and make stuff up and make you believe untruths. Imagine if in marketing businesses brands were all that universally honest about what they do. How marketing could look different if we were just straightforward and honest. Gillette, we're just going to keep adding more blades. Lululemon, women wear, men stare. My favorite is Activia, which helps you poop. And this Canadian brand, Buckley's, it tastes awful and it works. Buckley's is a cold medication. And as you could probably guess, it tastes awful. And it works. How bold is it to use that as a marketing statement? Our product tastes awful. But when you open your pitch to your consumer with a line that we can all agree on, you open the door for the consumer to buy into what you have to say. When your first line for a cold medication is, it's probably going to taste bad, that's okay, because there's a saying. Don't we have a saying? You've got to take your medicine, right? We don't say that because it tastes good. Medicine tastes bad, but you got to take it sometimes. They've based their marketing on this idea that it tastes awful and it works. On the left, they have Buckley's. On the right, the public restroom puddle.
I can't tell. Must be made by the same people.
These guys borrowed from the Pepsi taste test with a public restroom puddle and still lost. And if you're here from the UK or from down under, from New Zealand or Australia, then you're familiar with Vegemite or Marmite and probably like it. None of us in North America can figure out why you like this stuff. Like, if it's terrible, really. And Marmite knows that. Marmite's website is dedicated half to those who love it and half to those who hate it. They thrive on the fact that a lot of people think their product is horrid. When you click on I'm a hater, you're taken to a website where you can learn about how to make your roadkill taste worse by just adding Marmite. And they exploit the fact that so many people dislike their product in their marketing. You either love it or you hate it. That's a very bold statement for a brand to make. I'm sorry that was so soon after lunch. Marmite makes a bold statement by saying you either love it or you hate it. But that bold statement wins them fans. Because when you're honest with your customers, you connect with them on a human level. Humans do not fall in love with perfection. We fall in love with other human beings, and every one of us is somehow scarred or flawed or bruised or damaged in some way, yet we fall in love with each other. So as a business and a brand, when you exhibit that kind of humanity and warmth, you win people over. They can fall in love with you. But if you strive to be perfect all the time, it's impossible for us to fall in love with you because we simply don't know how to fall in love with absolute perfection. Rockstar brands understand this and strive to be human and real and funny and let their guard down now and then. And finally, Rockstar rule number 1, always turn it up to 11. And you remember how Pete Townsend of The Who ends every concert by smashing his guitar to pieces. At 70 years old, he still smashes his guitar at the end of the show. It would be easy to write that off as a stunt, as a gimmick the Who does. But I think it sends an incredible message to the fans in that arena. That night, Pete Townsend played the life out of that guitar. There's nothing left in that guitar to give to the fans the next night. Why take it to the next show? Just smash it right in front of you and leave it there. Hendrix did it, except he burned his guitars. And I don't know if the rumor's true, but Dave Grohl apparently plays till his fingers bleed. The rumor is that's a picture of Dave Grohl's guitar after a show. I have no idea, but I've seen Dave Grohl play, and if there is a guy who gives it all until his fingers bleed, not literally but figuratively, Dave Grohl is that kind of guy. He turns it up every night for his fans to 11 and takes advantage of that one moment to connect with them. Because fans at the show only have that one show to go by. You know, Springsteen might be playing 300 shows one year, but as a fan, I'm there on one night, and that's the only show that matters. For the band, it might be show 60 of 300, but for me, Steve, and the audience, is show 1 of 1. And great brands and bands remember that and deliver all they've got every night by turning it up to 11.
This is a top to, what we use on stage, but it's very, very special because
I never get tired of Spinal Tap. Rockstar brands know that they have that one chance to make that impression, that lasting impression, and they take advantage of it and give everything they've got to their customers, that interaction. A quick recap of what we've talked about. Number 10 on the countdown was consistency, like AC/DC. Number 9 was start out small, like Bob Marley. Number 8, be different, not better, the story of Kiss going from Wicked Lester to world tours in 2 years. Number 7, like Jimmy Buffett, create an experience for your fans. Number 6, live up to expectations, like U2 learned the hard way. Number 5, the story between Foreigner and Leonard Skinner, find your one thing, your well of passion and focus. Number 4 was take smart risks, like Al Cooper on the Bob Dylan sessions. Number 3, like Green Day, know and understand your enemy. Number 2, be real, have fun, like Taylor Swift. And number 1, always turn it up to 11. I hope that you found some information of value today, had a few laughs, listened to some good songs, and if you would like to keep in touch on social media, I'm reachable a number of ways. Steve at brandlikearockstar.com, on Twitter at rockstarbrands, also on Facebook and YouTube, and I would love to keep in touch. You have a copy of the book on many of the chairs. If not, I will be at the back table signing those books, and if you want to follow up with some conversations, I would love to. I hope you enjoy the rest of the evening, the award show, and the rest of the convention. I thank you from my heart for the opportunity to be here. Thanks very much.